Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International. We have quite a number of stories on the paper where we are seeing that the Minister of Solid Minerals have said that governors have no right to interfere with mining activities as it is on the exclusive legislative list. And then we have quite a number of stories on the paper, also looking at the press release or the press report that the presidential candidate of Labour Party had yesterday in regarding the controversy of the certificate of President Ahmed Tinubu. So you will keep tight as we go through the papers and see other stories of interest to you. I am Sedela Shadasho, and I'll be doing the program alongside Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Good morning, Sedela.
All right, we're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Please do well to follow us live there. Drop your comment or your contribution on any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will go straight into the paper, starting with the Daily Times newspaper. And on the Daily Times newspaper, we have why Nigeria must prioritize investment in infrastructure. This is coming from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. You can find detail on the front page and inside the paper. Identify yourself to Nigerians. The world now will be challenges Tinubu. Uninformed outsiders now see every Nigeria as a potential fraudster, forger, and ID theft. President cannot outsource defense on sensitive personal matter. Says the public office makes holders' life of public interest. Obi is befuddling. APC replies. You can find more details of that story inside the paper. Dumbata's second term in NCC cut short. Mada replaces him as federal government names new CEOs, additional presidential aid. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the Daily Times and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Blueprint newspaper, EFCC on the trail of diverted fund for Mambila Zungeru power projects. You can find more details on page 7. U.S. investors eye Nigerian capital market urge regulatory reforms. Nigerian startups face funding challenges and global inflation, including others. You can find details on page 23. Tinubu sacks NCC boss Dambata, names new head for NICOMSAT and NIDAT, NTDC, and NIPOS. You can find details on page 5. The big story on the paper, Tinubu's Chicago certificate not forged, a report coming from BBC. We're not satisfied, Obi Atiku. President needs no reintroduction, APC Igbo group tells ex-VP and Labour Party candidate. More details can be found on page 6. To be complete soldiers, you must kill Boko Haram terrorists. And we have NAF receives 2 Diamond 62 aircraft in Ilorin. You can find more details on page 6. And this statement is coming from the CDS. And at the downside of the paper concerning concrete roads, Mahi issues 14-day order to contractors, vows to punish defaulters. I will return trust to government communication, a statement coming from Malagi. Minimum Hajj fare for 2024 is 4.5 million naira. This is coming from Nakon. You can find details on page 5, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, where we have other stories here, no blanket debt cancellation for Nigeria and other African economies coming from the IMF. And on corruption, don't bring returns to my office. IGP warned police officers. We're happy that he's starting by example by saying they shouldn't bring any returns to him on the way of fighting corruption. You can find detail of that inside the paper. Tinubu appoint new leadership across the ICT and digital economy sectors. More can be found in the paper. You are not complete until you kill Boko Haram terrorists, CDS tell the troops. The Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, has issued a directive to the Nigeria Army troops, emphasizing the importance of actively seeking and eliminating the Boko Haram terrorists before they threaten Nigerians. You can find detail of that story inside the paper, and I'm happy that the Chief of Defense Staff is taking that, waking up the soldiers to actually their responsibility of protecting lives and properties. because that is their work for security cases. But then when you look at some of the ammunition they use, Rachel, when you look at some of the training they receive, when you look at some of the intelligence that they have, to some extent you will be tempted to think as if the terrorists are more intelligent than our own security operatives, because over the years we've seen that anytime there is an operation, somehow information gets to the terrorist camp, and then you begin to see that our soldiers are being overpowered. And I think in as much as the chief defense staff is actually telling them to wake up to their responsibility, do away with all of these terrorists, kill them so that we will have peace in the country, it is important that we also have to, would I say, increase our intelligence, because when you look at our security intelligence, it seems to be a little bit low. I cannot help but take my mind back to the issue of those prison break we had over the, I think, a year or two ago, where you begin to ask questions that information was already out that some people are planning to stage a prison attack, but then somehow that information was not taken seriously, and eventually we saw that till date some of these prisoners are yet to be, brought back to the prison. So I think that in as much as we want the soldiers to do their best by killing the Boko Haram terrorists, we also have to do something by giving them more ammunition. Even though from the previous paper we've seen that they are getting some aircraft, we saw it previously also some giving our air force all that they need to fight them. But we think also that for them to do justice to all of this, they should be given the enabling environment. They should have the welfare that is needed to be. Let them be sure that while they are fighting, their loved ones are well taken care of, and also all that they need will be given to them. Because it will shock you, Rachel, to hear that sometimes not just our soldiers but even the police, you hear them saying that they use their money to purchase certain things, and you wonder, these are things that are supposed to be provided by the government, but why are we having individuals going out of their way to make sure that some of these things are actually being provided? So I think beyond telling them to do this, provide all that they need so that they can do their job properly.
Tell I also like to see the CDS is not complete until he gives these soldiers proper ammunition. Our gears are outdated, Sele. They need an update when it comes to their gears. What about their weapons? They need upgrade. They need upgraded weapons, world standard and quality, for you to be able to fight terrorism, and compared to what these terrorists have, knowing how well funded they are, for them to be able to try for all these years, and then looking at what our army are left to work with. And it might look like something big that we are having two Diamond 62 jets given to the Air Force in Ilorin, but the last time I saw us getting a jet was like almost 4 years ago. So imagine if it would take us like 5 years before we get additional fighter jets, and it's just like two, and it's a state by state, or I don't know. But then it shows you that there is a lot of defunding or not funding at all when it comes to military, and then we need to see more. We need to see yearly purchase of such aircrafts. We need to see yearly purchase of more and more and more things that the soldiers, our soldiers, need to fight, be it the army, be it Air Force and all of that. So yes, we will not say it's not good job, or we will not say kudos for this too, but the last time we saw something like this being bought was almost 4 years ago under the Buhari's administration. We look forward to seeing more and more of these jets, and I hope that they are also of standard and not outdated. We're not waiting for the president of US to give us a jet that they are done with, or Germany to just hand over something that they are no longer in use. But we should also be at the position where we want to purchase what is being used currently when it comes to fighting a war at any level. So I'm just looking forward to more work from the Nigerian government. We'll keep pushing, Sele. There's so much work that needs to be done, and it's too early to give them kudos for anything, because they're doing nothing compared to what needs to be done. Are we going to applaud them for some of the success that have been recorded? Yes, but are we going to keep pushing that they wake up and do more? Certainly, yes, we are going to be doing that. So yes, we need to see more. Don't just tell these soldiers they are not complete without killing a terrorist, but you're also not complete without aiding them for that kind of success. So it's a two-way thing, and then I believe everybody should play their role.
much. Alright, other stories, let's still look at the Voice of Liberty, where we have other stories here on the NBC Act. We have sent social media regulation bill to NAS coming from the DG. You have no right to ban mining activities. Federal government caution governors. You can find more detail of that, and this is coming from the Minister of Solid Minerals. Richard, I would like to have your take on what the minister said concerning the fact that governors have no right to stop mining activities in their respective state. He said it's more like them interfering in some of the legislative duties of the federal government. So I'd like to have your take on what he said.
We were going through the story with you, and then it says constitutionally. And if there is a constitution that actually says something like that, then that constitution was not well taught. And then it's about time the people in charge of sitting down and rewriting our constitution do something about it, because a governor has power over his state to decide to undo and make the state move and function the best way that he sees possible. And for you to sit down as a minister knowing fully well that you are not even in the capacity to know exactly what is happening in a state, you need feedback from the state to your level, and for you to say that they do not have the right to ban illegal mining, then it feels like we're not trying to make progress when it comes to mining in the country. It feels like we are willing to move at a very slow pace, even slower than a snail. However, these miners don't move slow. So like they are creating havoc on daily basis. They are eating lands that they are not supposed to be, and even if they're supposed to be, it's not in a standard way, it's not supervised, it's not guided by the government. They are left to do whatever they want to do, and whether we like it or not, you as the minister, you can sit down there, you will come and go, but these states will remain, and then the havoc done by illegal mining precisely will remain, and governors will still have to be the ones to come and fix every damage that had been done, because there are locations that are not even supposed to be mined, but then we are seeing such going on. There are locations that are supposed to be for certain things, for farming and all of that, and we are seeing miners taking charge of that, which is supposed to be a progress where we say for a period of time this is what we'll be able to do at this place, then after a while we'll be able to recover it back to this level, so that we'll be able to do that. It has to be supervised, organized in a way that the aftermath will not damage a land that you will leave the state government to come and start fixing it. And most of the time we are yet to see any state government that have fixed any place that mining has destroyed. So if there is a constitution like that, then it needs re-amendment like quickly, because it's not acceptable seeing what illegal mining precisely is doing and what it has been causing over the years, and for you to say the governors cannot intervene sharply to do something about it, then there's something that needs to be done about that amendment. At the same time, I believe that you should also sit as a minister and talk things through with governors, and it should be quick as possible, because we can't just keep waiting when there are governors that could intercept and do something quickly, and now you're telling them they can't do something about it.
Richard, I totally agree with you that if there is a constitution like that, it should be reviewed. And rather than me hearing, or this is what I feel, rather than the minister coming out to say the governors have no right, I was expecting a synergy between the federal government and the governor, because yes, of course, there are certain decisions governors cannot take without the consent of the federal government, because there are other things that are on the concurrent list, there are others that are on the legislative list. So of course, according to the minister, this is one of those things that are on the legislative list. But just like you rightly say, there are things that will get out of hand, and of course, before the federal government will get down to the state level, it is out of hand. In fact, right now, some of these things are even happening in the various local government areas, and some of those areas are even far reach from where the federal government can even have access to. You don't even have readers to actually know what is happening there. Yesterday, you and I were looking at the issue of what is happening to our vessels that are missing, and then the fact that the federal government, Senate, is probing into the communities, security operative and other individuals that are working together with people that are, stealing our oil. But then looking at the issue of mining, yes, I know that the minister means well for Nigeria, and he was trying his best to see the fact that this is a ministry that we can realize billions and billions of dollars from that place if really we are serious about using some of our mineral resources to generate wealth. But then, just like you rightly said, a lot of things are happening that the federal government really, believe you me, they need the help of the governor to be able to tackle them. Because even governor, permit me to use that word, Richard, if a governor decides to frustrate the effort of the federal government, there is nothing you can do about things that are happening if he doesn't tell you this is what is happening in my state. Or if a local government chairman or even a councillor decide to hide it even from the governor, you cannot really tell. So I feel that rather than telling the governor to step aside, maybe there is a way you can have a synergy together. Let us see what can we do about it, because just like you rightly said, there are areas that are supposed to be used for farming. Farmers can no longer farm there. Why? Because the land is loose. Erosion has swept away a lot of land. So just like you rightly said, I think the minister rather should rethink that, even as we are going to look into things that will help Nigeria eventually. So we look forward to seeing that step and synergy between the federal government and the state governors. Other stories still on the Voice of Liberty. We have CSU: tell Nigerians your true identity, parentage, and others will be too. Tinubu talking about the Chicago State University certificate. Protesting Niger Delta group demand NNPCL boss immediate removal. Well, we hope that this doesn't escalate and get out of hand with all that is happening there. You can do well to grab the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On First News, comments on Tinubu, you're risking contempt charge, APC warns Obi and Atiku. The big story, Tinubu's Chicago certificate not forged, BBC investigation reveals no evidence of forgery. Global disinformation team says CSU registrar also attested to it that Tinubu did not forge his certificate. There are 3 versions of Tinubu's CSU certificate. Tinubu's sack replaces NCC, NIPO's, NIG, COM, SAT's bosses. And you can see woman. Okay, we have a story that says unveil your true identity, OB challenges Tinubu. Still on the paper, how 2 Christian judges conspire to remove me from office, a statement coming from the natural governor. And on impeachment, why Ondo CJ is yet to constitute investigative panel. And on Bayelsa, Paul Adeleke rallies support for Diri, inaugurates road in Yenogwa. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. We have FX arbitrary rules leave telecoms to Big Four, cripples 568 firms. And we have a column here, or rather where the bigger part of the big story, where we see Nigerian telecom market dominated by MTN, Airtel, Glo, and 9Mobile. And we're seeing how this operating cost is against the revenue that they generate. And then we're also looking at the domestic investment, and then the local service providers go moribund in 5 years, and quite a number of things that is actually leaving the telecom industrial sector being crippled. So you can do well to read more of that on page 6. Politicians corner 70% recruitment into tertiary institutions, says Ted Fund. You can find more on page 3. EFCC recovers 41.78 billion naira from power project, ex-AGF allies and others. More can be found in the paper. Still on the issue of the Chicago State University certificate, Obi backs Atiku, asks Tinubu to disclose his real identity. Lagos Blue Line goes electric, increases daily trip to 54. Police arrest undergraduates for killing club owners in a sex cabin. You can find more of that on page 8. Israel-Hamas crisis, Nigerians must resist division, tension, says Khan. quite a number of things coming concerning that, where others are praying that Israel do away with Hamas. But here we're seeing kind of saying, as Christians, rather than praying for the division, it's high time we pray that whatever the issue is between Palestine and the Israel, that they should come together and resolve it, because united we stand actually. So you can do well to read more of what Khan have to say on page 3, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Lagos to increase daily trips to 54, switch to electricity-powered rail. This is on the Blue Line. You can find more details on page 2. Federal government gives contractors with abandoned projects 2-week ultimatum to resume work. Alleged certificate forgery, no evidence enable forged CSU academic record. A report coming from BBC, as article describes report as jaundiced. Obi demands Tinubu speak up, save Nigeria from embarrassment. Nigeria's daily oil production hit 1.3 million barrels per day. You can find details on page 3. Tinubu appoints new CEOs for NCC, NIPOS, and NICOMSAT. You can find details on page 2. Oil assets divestment will boost production and employment. A statement coming from Wabote. And at the downside of the paper, Nigeria accounts for 15% out of school children worldwide. That is a very high percent for the entire population of the world. You can find more details inside the paper. A report coming from UNICEF. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
Right, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. Former governors, ex-ministers and others under investigation, a report coming from the EFCC. Israel-Hamas war, can caution against religious conflict as Adeboye backs Israel. You can find more of that on page 13. Also still on the Vanguard, a big story, APC will be at war over Tinubu. As the Labour Party president candidate asks Tinubu to answer 14 questions. Says Nigerians deserve the truth about President's true identity. Notes Nigeria now considered nation of certificate forgers and fraudsters. You can find that on page 5. Other writer still says President has no identity crisis. Obi acting article script coming from the APC. No evidence Tinubu forged his certificate he submitted to INEC coming from BBC. BBC report a hacky job jaundice coming from the article. You can find all of this controversy on page 5. Federal government back contractors with ongoing project from Fresh Beat. More of that story can be found on page 8. And we have on the Southeast zone, crucial to Nigeria's development. This is coming from Tinubu. You can find more of that story on page 8. And the issue of inflation, protect poor people from high energy prices, coming from the IMF to the federal government after cutting down our growth down to 2.9%. You can find more of that story on page 20. And health minister to hospitals, save lives before requesting a police report. You can find that on page 9. And Rachel, I think this is coming from the recent things that are happening. Recently, there was one that happened in Abuja where a lady fell victim to a one chance. And then after she was kind of unconscious, she was taken to the hospital. And we know some of this way that they need a police report before the treatment, before realizing that was how she lost her life. And I think this is where, this is not the first time we're having such issues happening, where people come seriously injured and then we see hospitals refusing to attend to them until they get a police report. So right now we're seeing that the health minister is telling the hospital, please, you swore an oath to save lives. So why don't you treat the patient, and then eventually investigation will go on, and then you will now get the police report that you need. What happened, how did it happen, and all of that. I think saving life is important before asking all of this. So we hope that we'll see hospitals taking all of this seriously to save lives first, rather than allowing people to die just because you need a police report that eventually you will not get, and the person might actually die eventually too.
Yes, for years I've found this policy in the hospital very annoying and senseless, and I don't know who came about the policy, but over the years it haven't helped people, and a lot of people that could have still been alive today have lost their lives. And I am grateful seeing this coming from the health minister saying save life first. Even if this person is a criminal, you know what? The court of law needs to know what happened. He needs to be able to reveal some things that they need to know. So even if this person was caught doing a crime, treat that person, because the justice system needs to hear what happened, needs to hear all the other people he's involved with and all of that. So why would you even think, if this is a criminal in the hospital, you shouldn't treat him until he gets a police report? The same thing for accident victims, until you get police reports. And we've had hundreds, thousands of people started losing their lives to something like this in our hospitals. And I don't know who came up with the policies. If it is doctors, they are meant to be doctors. Of course, they don't are supposed to even be making these policies in the first place. If it is the police, they have no business making that kind of policy in the first place. Wherever it came from is not even supposed to exist in the first place. But you can see the kind of nonsense we allow in our system, Sele, and we can always see the effect and the output of it. When nobody is doing their job, somebody will do your job, and then it will always turn out to be at the detriment of somebody's life. And this has been the output of such policies in the hospital. And I just hope that the Minister of Health would not just say it verbally, but we make it as a policy standing in every hospital. I keep saying it, important things are not just supposed to be left at the mercy of whoever wants to practice it, but that it should be implemented as a hospital policy, that regardless of the person, if this person is in need of, even if he was caught in the process of robbing a bank, he should be treated well, because he needs to face justice. Exactly. So let them do the needful and then put it out there as a policy. Therefore, when somebody is in need of help, they don't have to wait for police or statement. What would the police say about an accident? Were they there when it happened? So why is their statement important? So when you look at some of these things, they are senseless and thoughtless in a lot of ways, Sele, and I just have to voice it out like that, because ever since hearing that, it haven't made sense. And it makes me wonder if we're not intelligent in this country when we put certain policies. So I just hope that the needful will be done concerning this in specific.
Coming from when you voice it out with so much. Of course, we've had one or two loved ones or somebody we knew that have actually lost his life to such policy. But sometimes you don't blame the hospitals, because they know what they have faced after treating somebody, and then before realizing you treated a criminal, and then the person is well, and then the person. So I think while treating the person, you make the call to the nearest police station to say, we have a victim, or we really can't tell, this is what happened. Can the police be at the premises, so that when this person is getting better, he can actually tell us exactly what happened, or who brought he or she to the hospital. So I hope, just like you said, there should be a memo, an internal memo around the hospital to make sure all of these laws are being applied. Still on the Vanguard newspaper, we have 100 of us raided, kidnapped the FGC Yahoo student in 2021, coming from one of the bandits. You can find more of that story on page 7. We also have some column from Olufasan and also for sports. So you can do well to grab the paper and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, fuel scarcity, marketers unable to load petroleum products. A statement coming from Ipman. Seeks joint security task force to tackle crude oil theft. No to TED funds intervention in private varsities. This is coming from ASU, and you might want to know why they don't want TED funds intervention anymore. Find details on page 30. Table certificate Atiku presses on, Obi weighs in, APC hits back. You can find more details on page 4. Peace not negotiable in Benue, Army warns. 8 years after two pipeline vandals who killed 7 DSS officers in Lagos convicted. Federal government to partially commercialize dams under its 12 river basins. This is a statement coming from the minister. Lagos to increase blue line trips from 12 to 52 from Monday. And deputy governor's impeachment on those CJ Rights Assembly. Mambila Zungeru Power Project, AFCC recovers houses in Lagos, Abuja and Cross River, alleges funds meant for projects diverted through BDCs. You can find more details on page 5, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Alright, before we continue with other paper review, we'd love to take this break. So when we come back, we'll open the phone lines and continue with the paper analysis. Please stay tuned with us. Thank you for staying tuned. If you're just joining in, the program is the Dailies. We've been looking at quite a number of stories on the paper, what the Minister of Mineral Resources said about governors not interfering with mining activities in their state. Also, we are seeing that the APC is attacking Obi for the press he had yesterday, and also saying the fact that they actually been maybe aggrieved, and that's why they're saying all of that, and they might actually face contempt of court if they continue on that part, according to the APC. Quite a number of stories on the paper. We'd love to hear what your own take is about any of the story that is of interest to you. You can do out to call us on that number that is on your screen at this moment. Remember, turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us. Try to summarize your point in a minute so other callers can also get the room to air their views. I say have Rachel Tenza with me. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome.
And I'm Seda Elisha. Alright, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Daily Independent, before the calls come in. No evidence to the fourth Chicago State University record, coming from BBC. You can start reading the story on the front page and continue inside the paper. Umahi one contractor sabotaging concrete road design. The writer saying gives them 14 days to mobilize to site or face the axe. More can be found in the paper. ASU opposes private varsity getting federal government intervention fund. You can find more of that story. Ondo CG declined raising impeachment panel on the deputy governor. And we have Manufacturers Association of Nigeria asks the federal government to overtake bidding constraint limiting production. More of that can be found on page 29. We have Niger military rules under the UN official out within 72 hours. Niger military rules other UN official out within 72 hours. More of that can be found on page 7. Tinubu appoint new CEOs for the NCC, Night Post, and others. Lagos begin demolition of buildings on drainage setbacks in Lekki. More of that story inside the paper. PDP Governor Lawan decry harmful practices against girl child. We remember we celebrated the International Girl Child yesterday, and here is what Lawan have to say about that on page 6. You can do well to read more of that story. Tinubu certificate saga has hurt Nigeria's image abroad, coming from Obi. Tax him to come clean on his true identity. President does not have identity problems, says the APC. Downside of the paper, federal government set to commercialize dams under river basin. More of that story can be found on page 7. And that is all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, U.S. institutional investors show interest in Nigerian capital market. Reps orders CBN to alter monetary policy to favor Naira. The big story, real reasons IMF cut Nigeria's economic growth forecast revealed. IMF lament demonetization, high inflation, negative effect. Applauds President Tinubu's significant reforms. APC fires back at Peter Obi, says Tinubu has no identity problem. We have a caller.
Shaman calling from Kaduna.
All right, Mr. Shaman, go ahead, please.
Okay. How are you?
Fine,
We are
thank you.
fine, sir.
Honestly, Rachel and Sele, the Nigerian narrative seems to be stagnant. The rift between our leaders is not helping this country. Instead, for Nigeria moving forward, we are stagnant because of one argument or the other. Honestly, the issue of certificate saga would have been something that should be put to rest, to my own knowledge, because Nigerians are suffering. I would have advised that let these leaders come together and rescue Nigeria, because what is obtainable in the country now is not palatable to all sundry. It's only a psychophant that will tell you that it is well with this country. But truly speaking, every rational Nigerians know that we are not finding life easy. So I would have advised that we should come together in respect of whatever language or religion you are. Let us team together. Let us get things right. What is being experienced in other nations, I don't think it should happen here in Nigeria. The killings and whatever that are happening, I pray Nigeria will continue to live in unity of purpose so that we'll move our country together. That should have been our motive. But anything aside that, I don't think Nigerians are not getting right, because the hardship, honestly speaking, is knocking at our doors. Nobody's smiling. Nobody. We will continue to bless Equa TV, because Equa TV is reaching out to so many lives and it has soul winners. We will continue to enrich and hold you to greatness in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Good morning.
Thank you
you
very
so
much.
much, Ahmad. He's actually speaking the minds of most Nigerians, I believe, because a lot of people are beginning to feel that this saga is taking too long. And if you ask for my opinion, Richard, just like we said, I think last week or so, this is something that should have been done before the election. Maybe if only the right investigation was being done, possibly will not be having this saga at this point in time. But then we hope that regardless of what the court will do, I just hope that the court will set up a date. All of these things should be dealt with, and so that we can forge ahead and know what is the right way forward. Because this back and forth fight coming from leaders, you remember we said, yes, they are opposition party. They are meant to oppose everything that is happening. But I think it's high time we put our heads together, regardless of what party you belong. Nigeria belongs to everybody eventually. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that.
Still on the Matrix newspaper, we have Nigeria Army CDS Musa mandates troops to go after terrorists. Tinubu appoints new heads of NCC, NIPers, and others. You can find details on page 10. And the CSU saga, BBC vindicates Tinubu. Lagos to temporary short blue rail line operations, commence electric power train on Monday. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Take a look at the Nation newspaper. Why governors can't ban mining by Alake. Only federal government has the right. You can do out read more detail of what he said about that issue on page 6. Procurement fraud. EFCC recovers procurement fraud. EFCC recovered 27 billion naira and $90 million. Ex-governors under probe. You can find more of that on page 4. Tinubu holds Indi Igbo in high esteem, says Shetima. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Nigeria leads demand for Africans' debt relief from the IMF. Bretton Woods institution reject blanket cancellation. Why inflation is rising by the World Bank. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Federal government orders road contractors back to site. Work begins on 60 projects. You can find more of what Umahi said on page 4. Tinubu needs not reintroduce himself, says the APC. And we have a writer coming from the BBC. No evidence of certificate forgery by president. We have two leaders have polluted the public space with their consent deception. They have become accusers and judges in their cases against the president. You can find more of what the APC said on page 28. Also, we have illegal building pulled down in Lekki, and why no panel yet on IEDWA. You can find more of the issue of the deputy governor inside the paper, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On this day newspaper, NUPRC optimistic ExxonMobil, Seplat, NNPC will follow due process in asset sale deal. Says statement is commercial, not regulatory. You can start with the details on the front page. Tinubu appoints new CEOs for NIPERS and other agencies. You can find details on page 14. And in Bayelsa, INEC assures of electronic voting. Obi wants more on Tinubu. BBC says no evidence of forgery. Atiku differs. President has no identity problem. APC replies opposition as controversy deepens. We have a picture story where we can see strengthening public security, where we can see the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Hassan, and then with Kwara Governor, and then the Chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum, we have Abdul Razak at the delivery and reception ceremony of multipurpose platform special mission aircraft to 303 medium group in Ilorin yesterday. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Lower inflation, protect poor citizens, IMF tell Nigeria. You can find more of that story on page 19. EFCC recovers 27 billion naira, $90 million, probe ex-governors and ex-ministers. It's unconstitutional for states to regulate mining, says the federal government. More detail of the story is on page 19. The big story that is making round on most of the papers is on certificate forgery. Atiku Obi protests as BBC fact-checkers clear Tinubu. BBC said document confirmed President Chicago State University diploma. APC carpets Atiku and Obi. PDP Labour Party tackled Tinubu, says certificate issue trashing the nation's image. You can find more of that inside the paper, where we have PDP Labour Party tackled Tinubu, says certificate issue tarnishing the nation's image. Air Force launches new aircraft await attack helicopters. You can see the picture story over there. You can find more inside the paper. Ohaneze hail Indibo's release, says Tinubu to free Kano. You can find more. Ohaneze hails Ibohu's release, asks Tinubu to free Kano, where we know that by December he'll be having his hearing, so that will determine the fate of Nnamdi Kanu. More of that can be found inside the paper. Lagos demolishes structures obstructing drainages. More of the story can be found in the paper. And on the issue of diphtheria kills 600 in 19 states, NPHCDA recommend face masks, where we saw that from the papers that some of the states have to start wearing face masks, even though the weather right now is quite dusty. So it is advisable, whether your state is affected or not, have a face mask when you are in any environment that is maybe jam-packed, or actually the population is a bit high. It's advisable you have a face mask. You can read more of that. This is on page 12, and that is all on the Punch newspaper.
On New Telegraph, unemployed contributors denied access to mandatory 25% benefits. This is concerning pension. You can find details on page 3. Chinese firms compete for Nigeria's $5 billion floating LNG project. An insurgency war. We've taken delivery of 2 additional aircraft. Justice Odili to lawyers, use law profession to fight injustice. Makinde to police, reduce roadblocks on highways to encourage investors. And on diphtheria, 150 cases, 20 deaths recorded in Kaduna. The big story, IMF to Nigeria, stop CBN's budget deficit financing. 6 exemptions costing Nigeria, others 5% tax to GDP. World Bank president advocates increased intra-Africa trade. You can find details on page 2. And on Israeli-Palestinian war, Khan wants airlift of Nigerian pilgrims suspended, threats over safety issues. Will continue to strike until federal government does right thing. This is coming from ASU. And on 2023 poll, CLO petition US, UK, EU orders over rigging. IDGC cultural beliefs hindering girl child development, says PDP PDPGF. You can find more details of his statement on page 27 and 26. APC Atiku Obi fight over Tinubu's identity. There are writers under the story. Do well to find more details on page 3. And then a study that's saying running shows promise in tackling depression. You can find more details on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper where we have on Gaza. Israel forms emergency government at death toll hit 2,300. More of that can be found on page 6. We have Kaduna record 20 deaths outbreak under control in Kano. Still on the issue of the diphtheria disease. More can be found on page 18. And what's trending for the leadership, it says no evidence Tinubu forged certificate coming from BBC. Inflation to slow Nigerians growth to 2.9%. More of that story can be found on page 2. Don't fund budget with ways and means. IMF warned the CBN, and we saw even the Labour and TCN talking about the same thing. They are watching the government when they use the ways and means, and we know that that's someone that's not supposed to be touched anyhow. So you can do well to find more of that story on page 7. Federal government warns state government against interference in mining activities. Federal government warns state government against interference in mining activities. Another certificate saga, Atiku Obi kicks as BBC clears Tinubu of forgery. BBC report a hatch job. PDP presidential candidate is saying that come clean on educational record and identity. This is coming from the Labour Party presidential candidate Obi. Firemen crucial to national security, coming from Tunji Ojo. Procurement fraud. EFCC move against former ministers and governors, with detail on page 7. And we also have a picture story here showing us motorists queuing for petrol in Wuse Zone NNPC filling station in Abuja. Yesterday, as it seems, the queues are resurfacing again. We hope that NNPC will do something quick to make sure that the petrol is available in every state, so we do not see these queues coming up over and over again. You can do well to grab the leadership and read any other story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, Enugu government coal mining firm reached 1 billion naira settlement. The big story, ex-governors, ministers forfeit billions, houses to EFCC, recovered property in choice areas in Lagos, Cross River and Abuja. Federal government put subsidy payment in 2022 at 4 trillion naira. Suspected bandits kill village head and kidnaps cause in Niger. Rep 6 concerted action against insecurity. Deaths from diphtheria rise to 600. We have 98% of victims in 19 states not immunized. Owerri stands still as Uzodinma kicks off campaign. Governors, APC leaders hail. Tinubu removes NCC, NICOMSAT and NIPO CEOs, names replacements. Dollar scarcity bites harder, and we are having the naira and the naira hitting 1,030 naira to a dollar. You can find more details on page 25. Obi questions Tinubu over certificates, says debate worsen Nigeria's image. Igbo APC group urges him to stop overheating polity. BBC report exonerates president. You can find details on page 27. And at the downside, we have Israel-Hamas war spreads to Lebanon. Find details on page 8, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
Let's take a look at the world of business on Business Day newspaper. Federal government eyes new tax reform, conservative oil benchmark. Nigeria, third most sought after for investment. Now chair of World Bank African Governors Forum. This is coming from Edu. You can find more of what that have to be on page 2. How Israel-Hamas war could affect Nigeria's economy, especially looking at the global oil prices that have jumped since the fighting erupted between Israel and Hamas, amid speculation about how the conflict could affect the energy production in the Middle East. So you can do well to start reading the story on the front page and continue on page 31. And on upgrade concern as federal government prioritize international airport over local ones. Regulator expect ExxonMobil separate to rework $1.28 billion deal on page 2. Obi asked Tinubu to reintroduce self. APC hit back. President has no identity problem, says the APC party. You can find more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, Kane hires personal bodyguard in Munich. You can find details at the back page. Real Madrid talks up Mbappe move in 2024. And then we have a statement coming from Mourinho, I'm not the special one. You can find details on back page, and we will never forget his reign in Chelsea where he was tagged as the special one. Messi not going on loan to Barca. Saka voted September's player of the month. Man City unhappy with Haaland's contract. You can find details on page 2. The big story, Saudi Arabia friendly, Osimhen, Murphy, Boniface hit Eagles camp. We have Okoye gets late call up. You can find details on page 6. Murphy in race for SEPT player of the month in France. AC Milan target gives Orban despite low new season statistics. You can find details on page 6. Ehanichor shows support as Iwobi tests his rap skill with Onana. You can find more details on page 6. And we have Gomares now third highest paid in Premier League. AIU slams 6 years ban on Divine Oduduru. And we have Arsenal stepping up effort to sign Ivan Toney. And at the downside, we have Fury Guano PPV price set at $79.99. You can find details at the back page, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You're welcome, Sarah.
And thank you to our viewers. Thank you for Shamal for calling on the program, and thank you to our supporters for always supporting us on Echo Television International. Until we come here again tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.